Well, this one was kind of a risky buy. I think I paid top dollar for it. So this is a 1984 Kawasaki KX 125. And I ended up paying 850 bucks for it. And right now, it does not run. So the seller said that he got this as pretty much a package deal. He owns a scrapping business and got this at a guy's estate and just hauled a bunch of scrap away with this bike. But I guess this was the owner's bike at the time, and he said it was running when he put it away. I don't know how many years ago, but it looks like it sat for a very, very long time. But I bought it because it is mostly complete. I'd say 99% complete, and it looks to be in pretty good original condition. You know, the gas tank isn't all scraped up, it still has the graphics on it. Side plastics are there and no rips in the seat cover. Engine is pretty clean with the original carb, and it does kick over with compression. The seller didn't know about the spark, so we'll have to see today if we can get spark. But yeah, not a bad looking bike for a 1984. However, you know, these bikes only go for maybe $1,300, $1,400, $1,500 in running condition. So, you know, I didn't get that good of a deal, but if we can get it running today with not a ton of effort, it would be a pretty decent deal. And that's what we're going to try to do today. So let's get this one off the trailer, take a closer look at it, and hopefully we'll get this one running and driving by the end of the video. Alright, a little walk around of the bike here. Cool looking bike. A couple close-up shots. You can see the boot looks a little ripped in there. I'm not seeing any coolant leaking from the head. That's good. Let's see the bottom of the engine. Doesn't look bad. You can see a little dent in the rail there. This one is really good. Rear brake works, and the front brake also works, surprisingly. Tire has some tread left on the back of it. Original silencer and exhaust. Even has a plastic piece for the air filter. Chain and sprockets are actually not that bad either. Still has part of the chain guide left. See if it has any coolant in here. Ooh, she's dry. Must have a leak. Clutch pulls in. And then if you want to take a look at the VIN, so here it is. The 10th digit is an E, which is 1984. So that's how we know it is in fact from 1984. But yeah, this one should be a lot of fun. So let's get this one in the garage and start digging into it. Alright, we got the bike in the garage. Let's start diagnosing it. So first thing we're gonna do, like always, is check the oil. See if there's anything in here. Alright, looks like it takes looks like it says 0.55 liters. Alright, is that coming out? Sometimes those caps can break off. It's just a plastic cap. Is there any window down here? Looks like there's an oil check right there. So we can take that one out too. Alright, let's see what we get for oil. See if there's anything in here. Oh yeah, there's a little bit on there. Smells really, really old. Kind of smells like gas. Not looking too good. Let's check the oil check bolt here. So oil should just start pouring out of here if it's up to the correct level. You guys seen anything? Let's tip it a little bit, see if anything comes out. Yeah, oil was pretty low. Not seeing anything come out. Still nothing. Oh, there we go. Look how thin that is. Yeah, definitely needs an oil change. Look in the gas tank. Is there any gas in there? You can hear a little bit splashing around. Yep, I can see some in there. It's kind of hard to see. We'll take the line off the Petcock and see if that Petcock's working. But it does look like there's some gas in there. Looks like it is pre-mixed. All right, and then the radiator, we saw that it was pretty empty. Let's see how empty that is. I hope there's not a leak. See if we can see anything in there. Not seeing a whole lot in there. Looking for any cracks in the radiator. I think there's only the one on the one side. I don't see any signs of leaking from it. Oh, there's a dent right there, and that maybe it's leaking from there. Right there. I guess we'll find out here. That seat is in perfect condition. Look at that, not a single rip in that. I don't know how that's possible being a dirt bike, but that is spotless. That's pretty good. For a 1984 dirt bike to have the original seat cover not ripped. All right, there could definitely be a huge mouse nest in here. Let's see what's going on. Ooh, that is nasty. That is a nasty air filter. It's just disintegrating. Look at that. Look at that. It's just like falling apart. So I think this thing's been sitting for a very, very long time. Let's get a flashlight in there before I stick my fingers in there. See if there's anything living in there. I don't think so. Eee. Is that bad? It's just like falling apart. Look at this. Poke right through it. What's left of the air filter. You can see it's just breaking apart in my hands here. Nasty. But we got that cleaned out pretty good. Just one tiny crack in the shroud we can fix up, but usually these are all broken. All right, Petcock is right here. Let's get this gas line off. Oh, that was barely on there. See if there's any gas in it. Let's see what this looks like. I bet this bike has been sitting for over at least 10 years, I would say. Ooh, something's coming out. Felt like something broke. I think the Petcock did break. Ooh, look at that gas. Yeah, she's a little orange. Unless they're mixing it with red premix. I doubt it. That looks pretty nasty. Let's try to close this Petcock. I don't know if it will now. Nope. Something broke in the Petcock. Alright, there's the gas. Not looking too good, but I don't see any water in there. Alright, we hooked the Petcock back up to the gas line and now it's just pouring out the carb here. So that works, that's a good way to drain it. It's very rare to still have the graphics still on there too. Usually those are all off of it. So, I don't think this bike was ridden very hard. Alright, let's take a look. So there's the CDI. At least that's still on there. Coil is still on there. Looks like that's hooked up. Grounds are on there. Just making sure all the wires are plugged in. Here's the boot looks good. Always making connection. Spark plug is in there tight. NGK in there. Alright, that all looks pretty decent. Yeah. Alright, everything's here. Alright, let's drain out the coolant next. It looks like the drain is right here, this bolt. Let's take that out and see if anything was in there. Alright, let's see what happens here. We'll crack this free. Oh, that's on there pretty good. There we go. I see something coming out. It's gonna shoot out of here. So there's definitely some coolant in there still. Yeah, that's pouring out. There's quite a bit in there. So maybe it was just a little bit low. Alright, let's get this plug out of here. Let's see what that looks like. Looks like a semi-new plug. BR9ES plug. Uh-oh. That is not a good sign. Brand new plug. So it looks like somebody tried to get this thing to run. They put a brand new plug in. And obviously it never fired up because that is extremely white. Brand new. Oh boy, not good. All right, well, this thing's been sitting for probably, like I said, over 10 years. Definitely needs that cylinder lubed up, so let's do that. I have a feeling we don't have spark. Put some penetrating oil down here. So most likely we don't have spark. Or there's a possibility we don't have compression. Alright, a little Marvel mystery oil going down. Just in case one of the rings is slightly stuck. See if it's smooth. Feels like there's compression. It's pretty smooth. I don't hear any knocking. Yeah, that sounds pretty decent. Yeah, we'll find out here soon enough. First things first, let's see if there's spark. At moment of truth, I have a feeling we're not gonna have spark based on the color of the plug. I really hope I'm wrong, because most likely it's a CDI problem if we don't. Oh, there's spark. Yeah. Thank God. I don't know if they still have CDIs for these bikes. Look at that. Nice blue spark. Very consistent. Well, that's great. I thought for sure we weren't gonna have spark just because of that plug. All right, that makes me feel a lot better about things. So I know there's probably compression. We'll see if there's enough, but at least there's some. And now we have spark. So that is awesome. All right, so these 125s, a brand new rebuilt one, should have around 160 to 170 PSI. This one that's been worn out a little bit, it's been sitting 10 years, it'd be lucky if it had like 130. So if it's got over 130, we're gonna be good. Compression tester going in. I'm guessing it probably has like 135. That's my guess. Hopefully it has that much. We're gonna do throttle open. I believe the throttle is working. So we'll check it before we go. Let's see. It's a little sticky, but it is working. All right, here we go. Let's see what happens. So we're looking for right in this range. Over 150 would be amazing. Let's see what we get. Throttle open. Here we go. Feels really good. Oh yeah. We did have oil down the cylinder, so we're gonna do another compression test, hopefully after the first run, but that's 167. That's really good. That's amazing compression for 125. So compression is really, really good on this thing. So far we're getting pretty lucky. And I'm glad we are, because we paid top dollar for this thing. So, all right, we've got spark. We have great compression on the fuel. To get to the carb, I'd like to take the air box off. So let's take the plastic off here. Let's see, where's that held on by? I don't think anything. That's just coming right off. Cool. Now that exposes the carb. So right now I'm worried about the boot here. It looks like there's some small cracking on the boot. We're gonna have to investigate. Pretty common for the 125s to have that. But you can see it looks like it's in pretty rough shape. So we might have to cover that with some gasket maker or a temporary fix, we'll see. All right, let's get that clamp off. And we're gonna try not to rip the boot further than we have to. So this should just come right out. That was a little too easy. All the original air lines on it. Wow. Yeah, I really don't think this bike has been taken apart too many times. Let's see the slide in there. Yeah, it's working. Get a ton of gas coming out. So let's get that out. Slide is in the right way. Yeah, we'll just have to clean that up a little bit. You can see some of the sticky gas residue on there. Choke is right here. That seems like it's working. It's going back down. Cool. So carb is officially off. All right, before we start digging into the carb, I'm very curious to see what the reeds look like. So let's get this off and take a peek. Now we don't want to rip this, so we're just going to take a hammer and pound on that corner, try to pop that off. Tap on this, like that. Ooh. It's got the carbon fiber reeds in there. Nice. Oh, look at that. A chip out of that reed, a pretty big one, which might affect it a little bit. It's not the worst I've seen. I wonder if I have some different reeds for this thing. But yeah, pretty big chunk. I hate the carbon fiber reeds because they always have these little corners broken off on every single one I've seen. At least it seems like. Alright, so I'm looking for any cracks in this boot. Let's kind of separate these. Check out that boot. Don't want to rip that gasket. Alright, we saved the gasket. Here's the boot. That actually looks pretty good. Let's take a flashlight and look and see if there's any cracks that go all the way through. I don't think there is. Luckily. Let's see here. Oh, there's one right there. So this one, that one's pretty big. That one goes all the way through right there. Let's see both those smaller ones. These smaller ones back here don't. Those look fine. So one big crack so far right there. It's gonna need repair work. These right here don't go all the way through. And then the other side right there doesn't go through. So what we're gonna do is put epoxy in here, and then cover the epoxy with a gasket maker. I think that's the best way to do it. I've done other ones like that and it actually holds up pretty good. So this has to be cleaned with brake cleaner really well. It's got a bunch of oil on it. And then we can sand it a little bit and then put that epoxy on and then put the gasket maker on over that. And that should get it to where that seals up. So right now it's a pretty big hole right there. So this would have been running really, really lean the way it is right now. So hopefully the piston's still fine. Let's take a look in there and see what that looks like. There, actually. Take a peek. Yeah, piston doesn't look too bad. Looks like there's a little rust down by the crank area. Yeah, it looks pretty rusty down there. If you guys can see that or not. But yeah, the piston looks really smooth. No scratches on the piston. So I'm guessing the cylinder wall is probably fine. All right, first step is to clean this off really, really well. We're gonna use WD-40 first to get all the oil off first. And then we'll go back with brake cleaner and get the rest of it off. See how dirty that is. You want the gasket maker and the epoxy to really bind with the rubber. All right, little brake cleaner. Using some of the JB Weld 2-part epoxy. Just a very small amount of that. Mix that up. This hardens in like 5 minutes. Doesn't take very long. And then we're just gonna open up that crack. It's right there, and just shove some of that in there. We just want to glue that crack so it doesn't open back up. You can put some over here. All right, and then we'll layer a little bit over it. And fill in these smaller cracks here. All right, then what we're gonna do is let that dry for about 30 minutes, then come back and use the gasket maker to go over the top of that. The gasket maker can stretch a lot more, so if that comes undone here, at least the gasket maker will prevent any air from going in. All right, while we're waiting for the manifold to dry, let's go through the carburetor. Get these old lines off of here. Without snapping anything off. That gas line is shot. There was gas in the carb, so it was getting gas. And these all look like original lines. There we go. Yeah, you can see gas is still coming out. We might need the ultrasonic cleaner for this one. Ooh, that's pretty bad in there. That is really bad. Look at that. Lots of gunk in there. See if the float works. All those are stuck in there. Yeah, those are stuck. Alright, we're gonna let that sit for a second. Get some penetrating oil before we attempt to get those out. See if those will budge free. Yeah, it's not one to budge here. There we go. It's coming. All right, this float is coming out. And this one, if you rock it back and forth like that, I think it'll eventually loosen up enough to come out. There we go. And you can see that's pretty gross. Oh. Just a thick layer. That is completely clogged. Yeah, can't even tell what the size is. You can see the needle is completely stuck in there. Doesn't move at all. Rock solid. Just gonna douse that with some penetrating oil. See if we can move that up and down a little bit. Get that free. I don't think we can. I'm guessing this pin is stuck in here. Oh yeah. Alright, well, we're going to take a punch and try to get that out. Hopefully it comes. Don't want to break anything. I think it's slowly coming. Oh, jeez. Whew. Alright. Yeah. Can't believe that pin came out. Check out that needle. Look how cake that is. Alright, so we're going to have to be careful with that. There's a little piece that goes around the needle. See if we can get that out first. A little spring piece. There we go. And the needle itself, we douse that. We might leave that in there because I don't want to wreck it. Trying to get it out. Oh, I think it's pretty loose. There we go. But you can see all the gunk on there. Yeah. So at least it came out. That's good. The seat is really bad in there. That's gonna have to be cleaned really well. All right, and then right here, we can get this out. And there's actually an O-ring behind there. And we're gonna definitely let this sit before we try to get that seat out and replace that O-ring. Because there's no way that seat's coming out of here unless the O-ring is completely trash. Let's see. Oh yeah, it's coming right out, looks like. Maybe not. Yeah, we're gonna have to let that sit. All right, and then the emulsion tube, you can just hit out like this. There we go. It's not too bad. And we should have a tiny pilot down in here, I believe. I think we got her. A little sticky in there. There we go. And obviously that is completely clogged. Alright, then there should be an air screw somewhere on here. Maybe not. Got the choke. I don't think there is an air screw anywhere. Here's the idle adjust. I'm not seeing an air screw anywhere on here. So that looks good. All right, we're gonna let that sit in the ultrasonic cleaner for about 30 minutes, come back and put it back together. All right, epoxy is dry on the boot here. So we can cover the epoxy with gasket maker. And this gasket maker is gas proof, oil proof, so it's resistant to all that. Cover that up. Get that covered up. Alright, that looks good. The ultrasonic cleaner for about 30 minutes. Looks basically brand new. That cleaned up really nice. Here's the bowl. And then the jets are all clear. Went through the pilot. Everything cleaned up really nice. We got the O-ring off the seat. We're going to replace that. Got the seat cleaned out. It's really clean. And then the needle, the little spring wasn't working on the needle here. We got that working too. So we're going to put everything back together on the carb. And this should be good as new. Alright, carb is all back together. Let's get that installed. Alright, we cleaned this off with brake cleaner. Let's get some gasket maker on there. It's a very thin layer, just to help that old gasket seal. It's going to go up like this. And remember those reeds? That one is chipped off. I couldn't find any replacement reeds, so we'll probably have to order up new reeds for it as well. And put a thin layer of gasket maker around here as well. Just to help that seal up. Alright, that looks good. And then you can see our boot. All the gasket maker's dry on there. So this is going to go on right like that. Or slide in, the cutout notch part is going to be towards the bigger side here. Just like that. And we cleaned out the slide area with some sandpaper and WD-40. Now the slide should be really smooth. See, it doesn't get stuck up now. Alright, now we've got to install this onto the boot. Get the clamp on there. Now, we don't want to stretch the boot too much. So we're going to try to go around here. We can always patch it a little bit once we get this on. All right, here we go. All right, she's on. All right, air box is installed. Coming around here. Carburetor's looking good. Everything's tightened down. So let's work on that gas tank. If there's anything else in there. Ooh. Yep, there was something left in there. Alright, so this is the piece that came out of it here. I'm not sure how that's supposed to stay in there. It looks like maybe a C-clip is missing. This was supposed to go in there like that, and this piece goes in there like that, but I think there's supposed to be another ring that goes in there. So this piece is supposed to connect in here like that. And turn that on and off. Yeah, that's pretty gunked up in there. Let's get this off. Yeah, it's just breaking apart. Just disintegrating, what the heck? That's not good. That's what the Petcock looks like. We're going to obviously need a filter on here, I believe. Gas tank's a little crusty in there. Clean this surface off. Alright, we found this one. That might work. So the bolt holes line up, and the gasket, when you take it off, it does cover that hole. But I don't think when you have the filter in there, it fits inside that hole. It's just a little bit off. Let's try this one. So we might have to run it without the filter, and we'll just put it on there like that. Alright, we ended up getting a filter in there. So new gas line, new filter, and over here we ran into kind of a problem. So if you had this Petcock, the one we put on there, facing the other way, it would butt up against this air box here. So we had to flip that around and then increase the gas line length so it would attach to that Petcock. So we're gonna have to order up a new Petcock for it, but at least we can kind of reach in there and turn this on and off if we have to. But that's kind of how that looks now. So at least it should work. Hopefully it doesn't leak out of the Petcock here. All right, we're putting the spark plug that was in it back in because it's brand new and it was sparking good, so we shouldn't have an issue with that at all. Get your boot back on. There we go. All right, next is the oil. This looked extremely thin when we checked it out. So we're gonna drain it out and see what's in there. I have no idea if this thing shifts yet. We're gonna have to go through and see. But here is the drain bolt here. We'll get that out and see what that oil looks like. It seemed like it was straight gas when I looked at it on the dipstick. So hopefully that's not the case. Oh, that's not good. I think that's water in there. Either a ton of gas or there's water. Look at the water droplets. Oh boy. That is not good at all. Look how thin that is. Oh boy. Yeah, it smells like gas. Not a great sign. So the only way gas can get in the bottom end here, because it's a two-stroke and the the crankcase is separated from the transmission cases, is a bad crank seal on the right hand side here. There's a crank seal right underneath the case. If that is leaking and gas is overflowing into the carb and then into the engine and cylinder, it gets trapped into the crankcase, and that can leak out through the crank seal on the right hand side and then go into the transmission oil, which apparently looks like it might be happening. All right, this is what was in there. You can see it's basically straight gas. I don't think there's any oil left. So either somebody drained out the oil and then turned the gas on and it filled up with gas, the whole engine, or all the oil burned out of it from it seeping past the crank seal. All right, we're gonna fill it up with 550 milliliters of oil. Also, there was nowhere near enough oil gas in there at all. A little bit more. That looks perfect right there. All right, we've got 40-to-1 mixed up. Let's hope nothing leaks here. Alright, no leaking from the carb. You can see the filter is getting filled up there. I think that's completely filled up. Yep. Alright, filter's filled up. Yeah, no leaking from the carb at all. Let's see about the Petcock. No leaking from the Petcock. Alright, so far so good. Last thing we have to do is add some coolant. I'm a little worried that this is going to leak, so let's see what happens here. No leaking yet. I don't see any leaking. Alright, that's topped off at all. Well, we might get lucky. Well, it's holding coolant, that's good. Holding gas, no leaks there, and holding oil. So no leaks whatsoever on this engine yet. We have great compression, almost 170 psi. We have great spark, and now the carb is clean, and we have fresh fuel in here. So there's no reason this thing shouldn't fire up. The only worry I have is the crank seal on the right side. Just because we saw so much gas in the oil. And I don't know how that gas got there. And I'm thinking it went right through that crank seal. So hopefully the crank seal's not completely gone. If it is gone, this thing probably won't fire up, and if it does, it'll be puking out oil right at the garage door. It'll just be covered in oil. So what we might do is put some towels and tape them to the garage door just so we don't have to clean that up. I've had bikes where the crank seal is completely gone and it just pukes oil all over the garage. All right, we've got the towels taped to the garage door. Hopefully we won't need those. Let's see if this thing fires up here. How many kicks will it take? Usually with a bad crank seal, it'll take a lot of kicks. But like I said, hopefully that's not the case. Let's see what happens. Choke on. Gas on. Here we go. pretty good though. Sounds powerful. Oh, she fired up. Sounds really good actually. There's no way that crank seal's bad. We're not burning any transmission oil, so that is perfect. We do, however, have an air leak that formed right here. So you can see it when I was revving it up. It was like a black puddle forming right here. So it must be blowing by that fix, unfortunately. And something's leaking here too. What is that? I don't know where that's coming from. That might be water in the frame or something. What is that? Yeah, that's water. All right. So we're gonna try to put some epoxy on that again. See if we can repair that. It must have cracked back open when we put the carb on. All right, so we got everything kind of polished up here. Just wiped it down with some WD-40 and it's gonna clean up really, really nice. I mean, look at the tank. I think it's really great. Look how nice that looks. So most of the plastics aren't even faded. The pipe needs some paint, but the engine will clean up once we pressure wash that too. Rims don't look too bad. Swing arm, almost perfect. So yeah, it's gonna be a nice looking bike when it's all cleaned up. Look at that. And then we put some more epoxy on the boot here. We're waiting for that to dry. Epoxy's been drying for quite some time. Let's see if that fixed our air leak problem. Darn good now. Rear tire is actually pumped up pretty good. Let's see if that brake's working. Brake is working awesome. Front tire is pretty flat. It's really dry rotted all the way around. You can see all the cracking. I don't think this is going to hold air. We'll see. Nope. Well, looks like it needs a new front tire and tube. That doesn't hold air at all, unfortunately, so this should be an interesting test drive. keep in mind my front tire is flat. And front suspension feels pretty soft too. First kick. Tire being flat. This thing actually rips really good. I cannot believe it. It is jetted almost perfect. Revs out completely, goes through all the gears, shifts super smoothly, both brakes work, clutch works good. I mean, for 850 bucks, it's not too bad. Obviously it needed some work before it was running, but you know, now it's probably worth 13, 14, 1500 bucks. For 4 hours of work, I think it was pretty worth it. Not bad at all. This thing's really fast. It's a 6-speed, so you can imagine how fast this thing can get going. Low end is pretty powerful too. I mean, it spins that back wheel pretty good. The front tire looks like it's about to fall off. You can see it's cracked all the way around the tire. So I'm really happy that didn't fall off when we were going top speed with it. That would have been really bad. So we didn't ride it too long. I didn't want to push my luck. All right, cleaned up pretty good. Not too bad. for a bike from 1984. Well, first ride in the 1984 Kawasaki KX125 went pretty good. Really no complaints as far as the engine running. It's running great. And I want to do a couple of checks on it. So let's first check the oil. I want to see if that's milky. All right, here we go. Let's see what happens. No, she's pretty good, pretty clear. Doesn't look like any milkiness whatsoever. Pretty darn clear. All right, so that looks good. When we first took the spark plug out, it was extremely white. I don't know if it was a new plug or it was running extremely lean. So let's check it, see how the jetting is. Brand new plug. Oh yeah, that's getting better. It's turning brown, you can see. So that looks pretty darn good. We didn't ride it too long today because of that front tire. So that looks pretty decent. All right, one last check I want to do is compression. At the beginning of the video, we checked compression and it was close to 170, but that was with oil down the cylinder. Let's check it now that it's ran for over an hour. All right, here we go. Throttle open, we'll kick this thing over. Still pretty good. So we're looking at like 152. So it went down a little bit, but that's still really, really good for 125. Like I said before, a freshly rebuilt one has about 160. So yeah, that's pretty darn solid. All right, looks like we need a new boot here, a new front tire and tube, and that's pretty much it to make this bike reliable. Back tire is holding up pretty good, and the rest of it is, you know, pretty decent. I could also use a new chain guide here. I think the rest of it just broke off. Yeah, so we don't want that rubbing into the swing arm, so we'll probably have to order up one of those as well. Oh, and then a new air filter. So about four things we have to order up for it. So all those things shouldn't be over $200, I wouldn't think. So we'll have about $1,000 into this bike by the time it's done, which is not bad for a good running, driving 1984 Kawasaki KX125. And this is probably the cleanest one I've seen in a long time. I've owned a couple of them, and this one's by far the nicest one. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video, picking this one up for $850, diagnosing it, doing the first start, and then the first ride in over 10 years. I never get sick of working on these old bikes. So hope you guys enjoyed. Thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing. Stay tuned for next video, and until next time, we are out.